The fifth kind. In 381 AD, the Roman Emperor Theodosius took a decisive step to explain to all Roman citizens the world over which narratives were acceptable and which were not. In 381 AD, what Emperor Theodosius did was to step into a theological debate. He really wanted to establish orthodoxy, move beyond this era of violent debates between factions within the church, and that really meant political factions within the empire as well. And he settled a theological debate that might sound like a really fine point, but what it did was have an immediate impact on all those groups that were supposedly on the fringe of Christianity, the Gnostic groups and the indigenous religions and priesthoods and sects that existed. It said that all that was fake news and that the teaching of it was to be forbidden. And so that meant that the priesthoods of those other religions, the curators of those other texts, had to hide those stories. Texts literally had to be buried in the desert to keep them safe. Others would be shared secretly in underground meetings of esoteric societies. Other information would be hidden in plain sight, encoded into literature in the form of poetry and codes. In that way, these narratives were able to survive the orthodoxy of the empire, because the emperor wanted to be quite clear that it was the empire that determined what was true and what was false, what was news and what was fake news. And that power could not rest with unofficial indigenous priesthoods. There had to be a right and a wrong, and it had to be him who decided which was which. It's a pattern that continues through history. I've been a preacher for more than 30 years. I've preached on the book of Genesis in churches all around the world, and I've trained pastors in the principles of interpreting ancient texts. And so I've long known about these anomalies in the Hebrew scriptures that point to another, more ancient story. When you read them in parallel with the source narratives of ancient Sumeria, Babylonia, Arcadia, Assyria, you realize these ancient stories are not about God. They are about other beings who've arrived on planet Earth from elsewhere and have had a hands-on involvement in our evolution as a species. These other entities, in my book Escaping from Eden, I call them sky people. The glyph indicates the sky. They're people from the stars. That becomes clear as the story rolls on. They are people referred to as Anunnaki. The fifth kind. Click on the links in the description to watch the full video.